It's a great pleasure to see you again. This is session 5 of the second day of the World Association for Sustainable Development. And again, we welcome new speakers, new moderators, and I hope you're all joining us from all over the world. This session is being recorded and also is live streamed the social media. Those who are joining us from the social media, please send your questions. We follow it, we gather the question, and then we give them to the speakers. I am going to give over the floor immediately before we're very keen to do everything on time. So the chair of the session is Professor Samir Maliki, again, a distinguished and well-established scholar from Africa, from North Africa, from the Middle East. This is good about these North African countries. They belong to 3 different big, if you like, regional knowledge hub: North Africa, the Middle East, and Africa. So Professor Samir, the floor is yours. And this session is supposed to finish by 3:30. This is 2 o'clock in London time. For Professor Samir, please, the floor is yours. Go ahead.
Thank you very much, Professor Ahmed Alam. So good morning, good afternoon, and good evening for everybody who join us in this session number 5. We have the pleasure to listen to 3 articles, 3 presentation. So we start with the first presentation. I have the pleasure to be the chair of this session number 5. So Professor Doaa, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Professor Samir. Thank you so much, Professor Alam. I'm so happy to join the team and be one of the participants in the title of the WASD 19th International Conference. And I'm presenting a paper with my colleague Omar and Mohamady concerning gaming industry, the theory of Russian doll effect on AI selling computer gaming industry. So before I start, I would like to highlight that in 2020, I would like to thank COVID-19 because I was not aware at all about AI and anything concerning AI, but I joined concerning the university from MSA University in Egypt. We have an initiative to teach the instructors and give them a certificate concerning AI and what is the meaning of AI. So when I enrolled to study AI, I was shocked that the AI starts in 1956. And it was the first in USA, but when I started to study it, I studied it recently in 2020. And this is reflect a big gap between the times where people already started after the Second World War and me in Egypt, we started lately in 2020. And thanks for COVID for this, because I got the AGER, I got the AI certificate, introductory, only introductory. And this has opened the eyes for me for the 4th industrial revolutions and the industry of gaming. So basically the paper that I'm investigating with my colleague is focusing on the video game industry and the sales and how a big sales this gaming industry achieving concerning it can reach $2 billion, which is almost maybe the GDP of a country. So at certain
if you don't mind, just make the screen bigger.
So the title was Gaming Industry Theory for the doll effect from the theory that has been adopted according what they call it Matryoshka theory and the Russian doll effect of the AI. So I was highlighting why I'm interested in AI and the importance of the gaming industry, because the sales only from the gaming industry may be almost more than 50% of the GDP of Egypt, let's say, for example. For the total industry can create $200 billion, and it creates a lot of jobs. And this is the reasons and the hypothesis. My first hypothesis is the main factor, the chain electronic industry. What is this chain electronic industry? Vitally interface in the industry and how they can create industry after industry, and they are participating dramatically in the job market. So the paper research question is AI is the Russian doll or not? The second question, can AI keep producing more small industry and make more job opportunities? And the third, what is the next to AI? So this has attracted my attention, especially after the COVID-19 and the big gap between the developed countries and the developing countries. The research objective is to define the effect of AI on small industries and specifically in the video games industry, because this is attract my partners, Omar, for studying the video game industry and this huge oligopoly market. So basically the theory was focusing on AI and how it is functioning. We start by the AI in 1956, and then it is proceed to machine learning. And recently we are in the era of a deep learning where machines are using neural network after they were using in explicit programming. And nowadays we see the robotics using algorithms, and they are finding solutions for many things recently across the globe. So the AI and the reasons of using a Russian doll matrishka effect, that another big industry create a small industry, another industry, and another industry, where we can start by the hardware. When we start AI, it is started by the processor, the hardware, and it is started by the processors. How can we create a processor? So the hardware create later the software to AAA gaming industry, and this is Jachka and esport gaming. Recently, I realized from my friend that Egypt have joined an esport gaming, and the winners are receiving an award more than the award that they received for the hockey or other industries. So start by hardware, develop softwares and application, and then the AAA gaming industry. And finally, we are moving to something called esport, electronic sport, which is something new from my side, where it will start to increase and penetrate the globe without using the physical capacity and go to their playgrounds and increase. So the gaming industry, it is very attractive because it's create a lot of jobs, hidden jobs that we didn't know it, because it starts from the game developer, and we have a blizzard and respond and value. This is called what we call it a studio, where they can start by the developer. Another job, it is the game publisher, another type of job, so that we need to develop it and focus on it, which is the game publisher, followed by Ubisoft activations. There's a lot of industry and big companies, they are controlling this market. So if you see that we have a few industries, so basically an oligopoly market controlled by a big tycoons company, that they are controlling the gaming industry, followed by the software, another developing of jobs, esports, where they are having liquid teams, secrets, a lot of gaming arena, where we have LAN cafe, studios, and merchandise, and then we go for hardware and streaming services, and finally the distributor and the retailer, where we see them, the old generation, see the Google Play, the GameStop, the streaming, this is from outside. But behind this, there is a lot of job opportunities and a lot of activity that is created, and it is expanding across the globe, but we need to catch this industry. So I is creating in gaming industry both developer and consumer. So as you see here, this is the development process, where they have a development person who are developing. It takes more than 2 years until they reach developing. And the second stage, it's the kids, or that we name it, we thought that the kids only alone, they are using the game industry. But recently I realized that all people more than above the 40 years old, they are joining the game process, and they are making teams, and they are entering in esports. So the evolution of games across the years, it is passed from one player, which is the arcade, which we see before. So more low and two consoles, and that as we see it, box, Wii and the box, and then recently the console, and finally as Mark Zuckerberg move the gaming industry from the processing using certain application from this stage, and then it goes for what they call it sharing. Nowadays, kids or youth or old people are playing online, and they are sharing. So it is, I can, as if I'm doing the conference online, I can make playing games across the globe. I can gain a lot of millions across the globe by sharing, and we have a big company. The controller of this industry and the big tycoons in this industry is Intel versus AMD, and both of them are American company, and they are controlling the market from the starting of the first stage, from the processing to the sharing stage, where they took around 45 years until they make this huge shift. Instead of working and we're playing alone, to joining across the globe, I can play with everyone across the globe. So what attract my attention here? It attract my attention that the gaming industry, which is in the blue line, it is increasing. It's increasing from 2017, and it is expanding. It is not less than that gain, similar to the offices that they are increasing. But if we go for the last one here, which is the office product and the cloud services, which is dramatically increasing recently, because they can reach that. You see here, Microsoft relatively 50% of its income and revenues come from the Office and Windows and gaming, the three big products they are providing. In 2019, the revenue alone of this product reached around 7.7 billion. And I think this will be increasing year after year. But if you see, the Windows reached 4.7 and the gaming reached 4.2. So the often that we use it for typing, for research, the gaming industry, it is equally head-to-head to it, and it's giving a big advantage. So here, if you see for the overall top publisher and the gaming company here, you will see that this gaming industry, overall worldwide across the globe, we will have one of the application. It was in the top 10s, and nowadays it is IAC mobile. Now it is non-game revenue, and it is one of the top. So you can see here that the overall revenues, it is ranked one of the top from the application mobile. So the gaming revenue, it is expanding. We have a lot of gaming industry across the globe, from Nintendo, Cap, Activism, a lot of things that the people who are in gaming, maybe they are interesting. But why it is interesting? Because you will see that the top public companies by game revenues are increasing. So you see here, it is Tencent, which is a Chinese company. Chinese company entered the market recently, and this is data is 2018, and they are reaching 19.7 trillion in comparison to 18.1 billion, 18 billion and 19.7 billion. So you see that there is a growth around 30%. But there is a Chinese year-to-year growth rate, which is 9%, and they are exceeding Sony, Microsoft, and Apple, and then they are beating them dramatically, where they are having a higher revenue than the other in these game revenues. So how long it takes to take the job opportunities? So this is my point of view. I'm looking for, from an economic point of view, creating job, opening the eyes for the youth in order to penetrate the market with a very good advantages where they can have a good pay, because they want to have a reward for their. So they are taking 3 years minimum until the sales goes up and they develop. So what are the jobs opportunity? And this is important, developing and designing the game, instruction design. So this is usually the concept of development to start for 1 year. Then we go for the implementation and the trial and the programming, and then the last stage, which is the post-production testing and looking for fixing the bugs inside the gaming, and then the sales grows and they are expanding. And this is how they can find themselves, which stage they are going for it. And it is a lot of job opportunities in this stage. So we have two big players, the Rockstar and GTA, greatest game revenue of all. You can see here that they are increasing and they are reaching $984 billion. So the games are increasing. This is a top increase in the Grand Theft Auto yearly franchise, and this is called the franchising. They can create a brand and they are having a franchise, and it is expanding. So it is not only the developing, there are also another person who entered the market and having part of the pie, which is the App Store and the Google Play, and how they can reach. If you see here, they are the Google Play and App Store, the both of them here, there are 24 billion, and the other one, App Store, reached 37 billions. And this is the increase around 11% for App Stores and 15% for Google Play and 11% for the App Stores. So there is increase, there is upward sloping, they are not declining, even if in the COVID, I think the data, they are not published yet, but they are, I think they are increasing more and more because of the lockdown and the people staying at houses. So as you see here, the 2020, one of the data that I can see it in the budget that the people are spending from their income and the consumer spending on gaming, they are reaching on consumer total spending on gaming in the United States alone reach $49 billion from their income. I know even if they are not 19 trillion, but the 49 of the consumer spending in the 49 billions are spending on gaming and the arena. It is not only gaming and streaming, but it can be product, it can be shopping, it can be play stores, it can be toys. It's a lot of things. Another sub-industry has been creating. If you are writing a t-shirts, as my kids said, I will wear this t-shirt because it is of one of my games, because it is one of my favorite. So this is how they can create businesses and how they can create a new value chain where they are looking for. Another attractive things is that the expectation for 2023, if you are looking for development and growth and looking for keeping the economy growing, looking for economic growth, so we need to prepare our youth with this tools in order to be ready, in order to go for having a job in such a market, which is the console or in the games, but they are expecting that it's going to be increasing a cumulative growth rate from 2018 to 2023. I think this percentage, 9%, is very, very attractive, where they can increase and have a lucrative opportunity after the slowdowns and the shutting downs. So esports, my concern is in the esports. I started by the theory of the doll games and the Matryoshka Russian doll games, and then I'm moving from the gaming industry, and this gaming industry placed me in the esport, and how digitalization and AI made a new kind of social and competitive activity where people are trying recently to compete, and they are looking for American and South recognition on the esport as any regular sport. I didn't recognize, and I didn't know that we have an Egyptian esport game that they enter a lot of competition, and I didn't know unless my friend attract me in this paper and grab me in the industry of gaming, and I find that we have something called the Kas al-Arab, Arabian Camp by Intel, and then I find that we have a team, and they call the esport game, it is Anipus Gaming, and they started in 2015. They didn't win, but I realized that they win in 2020, and in 2021 they got a very high score in this esports. I honestly, I was not aware about this without my friends. So the esport revenues and the exposure increased. Dota 2 holds the highest price pools. So if you look for 40 millions at the price of the esport, which is a fortune.
Sorry, Professor Doaa, please, 3 minutes.
1 minute, less than 1 minute. I'm so sorry. So this is the revenues of the esport and how they are growing and how they are penetrating the market and how they're creating game publisher fees, merchandise, advertisement, media, sponsorship. So all these are activities that are created beside it. So what is the next step in this evolution? Meta has been provided by Mark Zuckerberg and expanding. So my conclusion is, after to make this analysis, to conclude the idea, it is last for 3 decades. Mankind has experienced tremendous achievement in AI recently. And basically here we need to shift the tradition, to shift from the traditional school and to more computer-based job. So this is basically important. I cannot teach my students the old theory that has been obsolete, and then I need to develop my theories with the new complexity or the new changes and the new things that have. The AI is a concept in its name and a power for in many industry, because due to it's creating more activity, and it is interface make also created by it. That is like AI has been the Russian doll. Yes, it is a Russian doll. It's creating many industry. It is continuing and will maintain continuing since we are depending on this industry and the internet. So my advice for the policymaker, they are urged to invest in education, in educating students and prepare them very well to the market and create a Matryoshka effect and get a benefit from this industry. This is a lot of my references. I wish the presentation meets your expectation. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Professor Doaa, for this very interesting topics and articles. I can agree, all our children are asking you to get some update in the gaming materials and also in the packaging, gaming packaging. Now, I will invite Jana Lonchi and Dr. Mohamady Jackman for the third paper, Gender Income Inequality in St. Lucia.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Allow me to just share my screen. All right. Good morning, everyone on the panel, and to those listening online. Can everyone see my screen well?
Yes. It's okay.
All right. Brilliant. Thank you. So the paper I'm going to be discussing is called Gender Income Inequality in St. Lucia. Just by way of outline, I'm going to introduce the audience in the panel to St. Lucia. I would spell out what my research question and motivation was, and what are the data that we use, and the findings from the analysis. To those of you who don't know, St. Lucia is a small open economy in the Caribbean. The population is less than 200,000, so really a micro state. It's dominated by the tourism and wholesale and retail industries. But what's unique and about St. Lucia and countries like ours it has quite high levels of unemployment, almost 20% at the end of 2021. And the labor participation rates hover around 70% thereabout. What is interesting as well is that when you look at the average earnings of people in the society by age, and then you break that down by gender as well, you are seeing that female earnings relative to those of males are actually much, much lower. So whereas the average earnings, let's say for a 40-year-old male, is in the region of 3,000 EC dollars a month, which is just under $1,000 US, the equivalent for a female is almost $500 less than that. Now you're also seeing that the chart is color coded. Your green areas are representing persons who don't have tertiary and secondary education, and your orange and yellow areas show persons that have higher levels of educational attainment. So when you look at the females anecdotally, female wages appear lower. We also notice that the female rate of unemployment has been significantly higher than that of males. This is showing unemployment over the last 10 years for males and females. And if you look at the red line, which is the higher one, the rate of female unemployment has always been higher than that of male. There is not one quarter where it has been lower. And that struck us as interesting. And we wanted to delve a bit deeper into that as well. Even when you look at the area of poverty, you see that the female head count for poverty between 2006 and 2016, when we last did our poverty survey, has remained the same at 30.2, 30.4 thereabout. Whereas when we look at male poverty head count, that has declined from 28 to 21. So we were looking at the data and we realized that, listen, females earn less, females have a higher rate of poverty, and they also have a higher rate of unemployment as well. We also, in keeping with the literature, when we're just looking at the data, whereas the male participation rate in the labor force is in the region of 76, 75% thereabout, that of females has relatively remained the same at 66%. So females are less likely to participate in the labor force, less likely to be employed, more likely to be poor, and more likely to earn less income when we look at the data anecdotally. But interestingly enough, the ILO in a 2015 paper highlighted St. Lucia as the top third country in the world where your manager at your place of employment was likely to be a female. That seemed very interesting to us, given all what I have mentioned in the previous slides. So once I heard that, I knew that there was an area of research for us. So the research question was, is there a gender wage gap in St. Lucia? And if there is one, when we control for the endowment of male and female workers, does that gap persist or does that gap dissipate? And also, is it that when we find a gender gap, is that gap due to discrimination or is that gap due to other factors? So when you look at the data for St. Lucia, all of the data suggests that females are in a worse position than that of males when it comes to the labor market. But yet still the ILO in the report puts St. Lucia as number 3 in the world where your manager at your place of employment could be a woman. And we found that very interesting. So we said, let's dive a bit deeper into this. What we did, given the research question that I just showed, we did what is called the Blinder-Oscar decomposition. And that is a decomposition that essentially takes the wages of two groups of workers. In our case, it's male versus female workers, and tries to break down that, that difference and to see whether that difference can be explained by differences between the two cohorts. So is it that that difference is due to different levels of education? Is it that that difference is due to different industries where males and females work, and so forth? What that methodology also allows, it breaks down the difference into an explained and a residual. If your residual is significant, it tells you that, listen, this is not necessarily due to differences in endowments between the two. And more often than not, that residual, where it is significant, that is ascribed to discrimination. So that's really the research question and the methodology. Now, we know that females choose to participate in the labor force at lower levels than males because of traditional gender roles, where females have often been the caregivers for young children and for the elderly persons in the society as well. So we also estimated the gender gap, correcting for that sample selection issue. So in the slides to follow, we will take a look at what our results were. Our model is a Blinder-Oscar decomposition, as I mentioned. Our dependent variable are the log hourly wages. So we are trying to explain male and female wages. And our independent variables are age, educational attainment, and you'll see in educational attainment is a categorical variable. So we have no education, primary school education, secondary school education, and so forth. So we have 7 levels of education. We also have 5 levels of tenure, job characteristics, and industry. And this data is coming from a 2016 survey of living conditions that was done on the island. So it interviewed roughly 1,400 households, and it asked the households quite detailed questions. We were fortunate to get the results of that, and it is that data set that we are using to build this model here. We fine-tuned that data a bit to focus on only persons that were within the ages of 25 to 54, because that is the prime working age within our society. And we also filtered out missing observations and what have you. So we ended up with a sample size of roughly 1,300 persons, of which 46% were women. So this is our data set that we use. This is the model that we ran. And our research question is to establish whether there is a gender gap between the wages that males earn and the wages that females earn. In starting out the analysis, we looked at our dependent variable, which is the log of hourly wages. And we did a density plot of hourly wages. And as you could see from the chart, the jagged red line shows you the density plot for log female wages, while the blue line shows you the density plot for male hourly wages, and the data is in log form here. You could see that the red jagged line is to the left of the male blue line in almost every single instance. So that already begins to tell us that there is something going on. When we ran the model, we found some very interesting results, and allow me a few minutes just to go through those results. Consistent with our thinking and our a priori expectations, higher level of education is associated with higher wages, which is fine and makes sense. But we noticed that there was some interesting differences between men and women when it came to education. For men, it was only university education, and you're looking at the first column there, only university education, where you began to see a statistically significant difference in earnings. Whereas for females, you are seeing a statistically significant difference starting at upper secondary, post-secondary, and university education. Now, if you look at the university education coefficient, while they are both significant for men and women, indicating that university educated men and women have significantly higher incomes than their counterparts with lower levels of education, the coefficient is quite large for women relative to that of men. So it shows us that education is actually more important for women relative to men, particularly the higher levels of education. We also see that tenure, which is the length of time someone has been employed, scales positively with income. And for both men and women, we are seeing that in the 10-year and more, that is where you begin to see a statistically significant difference. You also note that when it comes to women, age is statistically significant, whereas there is no statistical significance of age vis-a-vis income for men. That's another telling sign as well, and we could always discuss in the during the discussion segment. In the previous slide, which looked at the first half of our results, we showed that education was significant and positively correlated with income. If you look at the educational attainment of women and you focus on the highlighted area, the circular area there, we see that women have higher levels of university education, almost double that of males, and higher levels of post-secondary education, almost 4 or 5 percentage points higher than males. Looking at the second half of our results when we ran our model, when we look at the type of industry that men and women worked and the type of job characteristic that men and women have, we found some interesting differences there as well. You are seeing that it is really in the craft and professional sectors that men get statistically more earnings, whereas for women, it is where they are managers and professionals. And we are looking at the level of significance indicated by the asterisks there. In industries, you are seeing that women in the manufacturing industry earn considerably less than their peers, and that is one of the only areas of statistical significance relative to males, where across the industries, you are not seeing much variation for males there at all in terms of statistical significance. So the industry one works does not appear to statistically influence the average incomes within our context. But again, interestingly enough, when you look at where men work and where women work, almost half of women work for the public sector or our government and the retail industry. And it scales downward significantly from there. When you look at male and where they work, you see it's evenly spread out across the industries, with the purple bar being construction.
Please, sorry, Mr. Johnny.
Okay.
Try to conclude, please.
Okay, thank you. The final analysis, when we did the decomposition, we found that there was a 0.24 or 27% differential between the income of women versus men. So there was a positive gap. When we adjusted for sample selection bias due to the reasons that I indicated earlier, that gap actually doubled to as high as 50%. So our findings showed that there was a wage gap. The wage gap is as high as 27 to almost 50% when you look at the decomposition, and that gap is largely unexplained, meaning that that difference cannot be attributed to the educational differences and the other endowment differences between the two. So in conclusion, there is a gap. That gap is not due to the differences between the educational attainments or industries, which leads us to believe that that gap is driven largely by discrimination. Thank you very much, and I shall end there.
So thank you very much, Mr. Johnny, for this nice presentation.
Thank you.
We will get a lot of debate. I imagine it's very interesting topics. Now you're welcome. We move to the third presentation. I don't know if Dr. Hussein Al-Isa is ready. Professor Doaa. Welcome, Dr. Hussein.
Thank you.
It's a pleasure to hear from you now. The floor is yours about your article, Strategic Orientations in Small Businesses, a Dynamic Capability Perspective. Please.
No problems with sharing the screen. Just 1 second. This one, I think. Share. Can you see the slides?
Yeah. Please, full screen. Yeah.
Okay, so.
Can you just click on show, make it bigger?
Yeah, make it bigger, please.
No, the next one. No.
This one, okay.
It's okay.
So my name is Hussein Hakim Al-Isa. I was previously affiliated with Sharqiya University. I was teaching management and strategic management and leadership courses. Today I'm here to present a research manuscript titled Strategic Orientations in Small Business and the Dynamic Capabilities Approach Perspective. I'd like to begin by welcoming you with a short summary. Next. This study explores the link between strategic orientations as well as the role played by them in impacting business performance. Competitive advantage is also examined as a potential mediator to the Strategic Orientations Performance Association. Dynamic capabilities is also investigated as a possible moderator. So all these are strategic business concepts. I'm sure we are all familiar with them in policy making and strategy. It can be the study is a bit abstract, but the application can be seen in many areas of firm strategy in everyday, small business, medium-sized or large business. The data was collected from Tripoli in Libya during the current economic crisis that has been caused by the civil unrest that you might be familiar with if you follow the news. North Africa, especially in Libya. The COVID-19, of course, the pandemic hitting everybody and mostly the small business owners. And that's the interest and motivation behind the study, is to see the everyday person How are they surviving? How are they the everyday businessmen? I mean, how are they, or businesswoman? How are they? Today is a very gender, so you have to watch which gender we talk about. So PLS was used to analyze the data on a hypothesis testing for the 168 responses that were collected. The findings showed that the constructs are instrumental in responding to economic downturns and results in better performance if mediated by mediated to competitive advantage. The study is original in the attempt to investigate the resource-based view. It integrates the resource-based view with the knowledge-based view with the dynamic capabilities view. So in order to study these constructs, strategic orientation, competitive advantage, and firm performance. This has not been done before, combining all those three theories to study concepts like this in small business, especially. Here's an outline of the presentation. It shows the sequence of these 9 important sections that I would like to share with you today. Let me start with the sector. This is the sector issues that motivated the study. The crisis disrupts entire systems, excuse me, and threatens survival of firms. And so to competitively position the organization and prepare it in such fast-moving, disruptive environment, entrepreneurs and managers must devise plans that warrant imminent survival. Libya does very poorly when it comes to entrepreneurship, as stated by the most recent report by the Global Entrepreneurship Index that showed Libya ranking 114th out of the 137 countries that took part. Consequently, firms configure their resources and dynamic capabilities to devise strategic orientations to adapt to fast-changing environments. So we got an idea of how that disruptive systems can impact organization performance. We saw that this is the background to give you an idea of how it is, how tough it is for small business owners in Libya, and the poorer infrastructure that they have to go through and live with in order to survive and thrive, hopefully. The ability of firms to sustain performance during tough economic times, is a capability rather than a result. Limited research has been done on strategic orientations and how it impacts real crises, in real situations, not hypothetical situations. There are limited studies on that. Numerous calls for exploring moderators between strategic orientations and performance has been asked. Numerous calls also for integrating theories, like I mentioned earlier, with concepts and constructs and models. Next here, from the mentioned analysis, the following 3 objectives emerged for the study, where we examine relationships between strategic orientations and competitive advantage and performance, determine mediating effect of competitive advantage on the relationship between strategic orientations and firm performance, and to evaluate the dynamic capabilities as a moderator between strategic orientations and firm outcomes. Next here we have this is the research model, and it shows all the constructs and the relationships with hypotheses. 7 hypotheses were were prepared, were presented. The figure on shows also the that what's the strategies and the antecedents to crisis preparedness. Next, we have the methodology used. Is quantitative research methodology. The data was collected from entrepreneurs in Tripoli city. It was done through snowballing method of simple random sampling, where you give you ask a business owner to for other friends and colleagues and partners who are similar to him, to ask them to fill out also questionnaires. It's a tough city to collect data. There are multiple checkpoints. There's militias. There's a war happening, kind of a civil war dormant that erupts once in a while in Libya. So it's very hard to collect data. The 168 questionnaires were very difficult to collect. Survey questionnaires were used from previous, like you can see here, previous instruments used and validated. Also, SPSS was used for the descriptive part of the analysis. A pilot study was conducted on 40 individual entrepreneurs to validate the instrument. The aim, of course, of this study was to test hypotheses, structural model that I showed previously, to verify the theories underpinning the framework, right? So that's next here are the findings of the study and the data analysis of the collected data, and it showed mostly accepted hypotheses, except when it comes in the end here towards the relationship with the moderating relationship between dynamic capabilities and between orientations and performance. The first objective of the study was to determine the relationship between strategic orientations and competitive advantage. And there were two hypotheses. Let me go back. There were two hypotheses that were rejected here. The first two, which is learning orientation and entrepreneurial orientation with outcomes, with competitive advantage. Those are most likely rejected because small, from my discussions with the entrepreneurs, understanding of the business environment in Libya, I was able to conclude that small businesses may feel that they do not possess the tactical knowledge because of their size. They don't have access to information. They lack experience in different environments. It's closed off society, right, from the rest of the world, especially now with the crisis, since 2011. And the hectic, constantly changing environment and crisis makes it even harder for business owners. So that's the main reason, I think, for some of the dynamic capabilities require and learning orientation with firm performance typically it has a positive relationship, but in this case doesn't, because of the nature of the environment. The crisis is extreme. Also, entrepreneurial orientations are very wasteful of strategic resources. They are useful for companies trying to start businesses aggressively in a competitive environment, but when extended over longer periods, they waste resources, and there's too many risks being taken that adversely affect the performance of the firm. The second objective was to determine the mediating effect of a competitive advantage on the relationship between strategic orientations and firm performance. This one had 1.5, it's H5C. Hypothesis 5C was the one rejected here. It's in the middle, somewhere in the middle. I don't know if you can see my mouse here. So here, the learning orientation.
Dr. Hussein, sorry, 2
Yes.
minutes.
2 minutes left. Okay.
Yeah.
I have 2 more slides, so I should be good. So here in second objective, again, learning orientations keep coming up. So again, small businesses lacking experience, lacking resources to spend time to learn, to take their time to learn about the environment, about business tactics that may work for them. The third objective was to evaluate the dynamic capabilities as a moderator. And again, most of the hypothesis 7 was rejected, all of it actually. And that tells us that there's a line of past research also that found it might be due to factors like magnificence, industrial complexity, firm size, age. So there are many other variables that I could have added to study. So this is one of that brings me to the where am I? To the limitations of the study. So if I had added other variables like firm size to control for firm size and experience, it would have helped in the analysis part. The study, however, contributes through investigating performance in actual crisis and merging or integrating the theoretical underpinnings. And it also helps policymakers in allocating resources to the right place through the right channels. The limitations against the small sample, cross-sectional. Future research should conduct a bigger, larger sample and a longitudinal study. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Hussein, for this presentation. Now, if you have some comments or questions, maybe I will start with Mr. Johnny with the second presentation. It was very interesting, gender income inequality in the San Lucia, and you used a survey, national survey, to quantify this gender income. My question: why you haven't, for example, take the variable gender as dependent or independent variable, and to try to see what will be the impact of the other variables?
Thanks. That is something that I could take on board. I'm guessing we will focus on wages. So we wanted to look at it from the perspective of wages. So we made wages our key variable. But we can flip it and have just gender be a 1-0, almost logic type regression, and then see what the results show. But when you look at the underlying data, there is a clear difference between the fact that women are much more educated, but yet still earn significantly less income. And even within industries, you are seeing the income receipts being less within the industry as well. So we really wanted to just focus on that difference and to see whether that difference was one that was due to discrimination or whether it was one due to non-discrimination. And I think we found evidence of discrimination, since we cannot tie it necessarily to any other objective measurement of difference, whether it be education and what have you.
Okay, just before Dr. Ahmed, who raised the hand, why you choose only the data of age between 25 and 54? Even
Sure. So our labor force surveys start as, in terms of our definition for employment, it starts as low as 15 and goes as high as 65. But then what we recognize is that between ages 16 to let's say 21 or 22 thereabout, a lot of these persons have high levels of unemployment and are not really active in the labor force, because in our jurisdiction there are issues with how easy it is for a school leaver to leave school and enter the workforce. So it takes a number of years for them to enter the workforce. So he wanted to zone in and focus on the persons in the workforce who we believe were most active, so that our results would not be skewed by the high levels of unemployment and whatnot that you are seeing in the younger cohorts and in the older cohorts as well. So we focus on the most active.
Thank you very much, Mr. John. Dr. Ahmed, please.
Yeah, good evening, everybody. First of all, I would like to thank Janai for this articulated radiography that he made for the gender wage inequality in Santa Lucia. Very interesting and very articulated. But I wish to hear from him, maybe because of the time restrictions, his explanation, interpretation of why this inequality, especially in Santa Lucia. We know in general what is the situation, but in Santa Lucia, is there any specific reason for this inequality? And then what is more important also, what he proposed to rectify this situation, what he recommend to overcome this unfair and unsustainable situation.
Thank you very much for those questions. Interestingly enough, in St. Lucia, it is enshrined in our law that discrimination is illegal. And there is a Department of Gender Affairs who has a sort of overseeing and monitoring role. But then you are seeing that, notwithstanding that you have legislation and what have you, which would have been my initial response to what can be done about it, I would have said legislation, but we already have legislation and we already have a gender affairs department. So the solution is not necessarily there. The solution, I think, is tied to why does it exist, which was the first question that you answered. And going through the data, we really need more research to understand why, because we are a relatively progressive society, and the Caribbean is relatively well known for its human rights and also female rights as well. So that it is so persistent in our economy is really a sort of mystery that requires more investigation. And perhaps if I'm fortunate enough, that would be my next study, to understand the why. But within our context, with a very progressive, a very open society, it is a strange occurrence to be that strong and that persistent. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Professor Joseph, please.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you very much, Janai, for that elaborate presentation. Mine is just very simple. As we were discussing, as we were making a presentation, I started thinking aloud, what kind of data do you really handle? Was it cross-sectional data? Is it panel data or time series? And how possible was it for you to draw such conclusions if the type of data you were dealing with was actually cross-sectional? Because I'm not very sure of the type of data that you are talking about.
Thank you for that. So the data is a survey data. It's drawn from a sort of random stratified sample. So it's not time series, because it was done just for the year 2016. So we could have used the labor force surveys, which are time series, because we have the labor force surveys every quarter. So it's survey data for the year 2016, and it was a random stratified sample. So to your initial observation, yes, it's essentially sort of cross-sectional as opposed to longitudinal or time series data.
Do you have any other questions, Professor Joseph, or it's okay?
Well, my concern is actually the kind of conclusions he makes with the cross-sectional data. I mean, I have difficulties just trying to digest that kind of thing.
Yeah, yeah. Now, we talk about gender. For gender balance, I will ask Professor Doaa about the very interesting paper and the idea behind this artificial intelligence effects on gaming industry, and we all survived this context after the pandemic. What do you think after the pandemic? Maybe this gaming industry will keep this increasing in terms of activities, or what do you think?
Okay, I need to repeat the question if I hear it correct. You were asking about the ethics, or you are asking about the growth of the industry? And I want to clarify, you are asking about the ethics of the industry or the growth of the industry?
The growth of the industry, the growth.
Yes, so the growth of the industry is increasing dramatically in the north of the globe because they have the technology since 1956. And they are developing it faster and faster, and we are consuming it. I'm aiming that our educational systems develop students to participate in the ICT sectors and develop more technology-based and prepare students who's more skilled, not just an academic tools, because the market is highly in need to just skills. I think Professor Hussein, his mic is working. I think so.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. In the discussion chat, we have a question for Professor Doaa. Do you really see the role of AI and gamification in our universities?
Yes, there is a huge initiatives in Egypt, across Egypt, concerning gamification and industry. There is a lot of initiatives from the Ministry of Telecommunications and ITIDA. They are providing training, they are providing scholarship in our university in MSA. Especially, we are having programs through Huawei and Microsoft. We are developing students' skills, we are providing them with competitions. They are trying to give them or decrease the illiteracy or give them the tools in order to penetrate the market. Also, the ministry is providing a lot of training in order to engage them if they can process or they can have a good idea. So yes, many universities in Egypt are progressing positively. We know that we are late, but we don't want to take the chance. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks a lot. Is there any other comments or questions from the board? Yeah, Professor Joseph, please.
Thank you very much.
I think Professor Joseph?
Chair. And thank you very much, our presenter, Issa, for problems of internet connectivity. Hello?
Yeah. Please repeat, yeah, please.
Okay, I have a question for Issa. Thank you very much for your presentation. I saw your figure 4 had the mediators. Unfortunately, I did not see the moderation, although later on I saw them in the table for the displays of results. The issue that I wanted to ask relates to endogeneity bias. How did you handle endogeneity bias? Because I see some of the constructs that you mentioned as really independent. At one stage, they can actually become dependent variables, especially as I saw them in figure 4, the way you are presenting them. And then the other aspect that comes in is that the kind of data that you use seems to be cross-sectional data using small samples, but somehow you go ahead and test for mediation. I do not know whether some of the relationships and the regression coefficients that you get are not really spurious. Could you just respond to some of those?
Can you hear me? Oh.
Yeah, it's okay, Dr. Hussein. Yeah.
Can you hear me? Okay.
Yeah, you can.
So the first, if I remember correctly, Dr. Tai, the first question you asked about the moderation of dynamic capabilities, correct? You were saying it was not clear. It's there. It's in hypothesis 4 and 5. I don't know if I can share with you. If is that the question you asked? The first question? Can I share that slide again?
Well, I think you can look.
This one, right? Can you see it? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
it's okay.
You can see hypothesis 4 and 5. That's the moderation. I don't know if the dotted lines maybe made it not clear. The dotted
Okay.
But the moderation is there for dynamic capabilities. The other question was whether the coefficients were high enough for mediation, because there are many mediations happening, right, between entrepreneurial orientation. Because I'm testing in this study, I tested the relationships between strategic orientation constructs. So the entrepreneurial orientation acts as a mediator. I also test the competitive advantage as a mediator for the whole construct, the whole, model, for the whole model. So I didn't mention here, but I do have some figures. They were quite significant. They were in the close to 0.29, I believe. The coefficient of determination, I think, is what you asked about, right? They were close to 0.29 to 3. But I tested the model, the framework, in 2 separate models. One as whole constructs, so strategic orientation as an independent variable, competitive advantage as a mediator, and firm performance as a dependent variable. So I did that. Then the second model was the one that you see it here in figure 4, in slide 4, where they're all separate. And of course, when they are separate like this, the figures are lower because it's spread out, I believe. I don't know the better term to explain this, the statistical relationships. I don't know if that answers your question. I don't know.
Well, it's fine. It's fine.
Thank you. Thank you. Now, Dr. Isadik Ahmed.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. Very good presentation. My question for the small business. Actually, you didn't tell us about which theory you use for your develop this model. You want to know the theory behind this. Then your sample, yes, is small. There is no problem. But you should test for normality. Is the data, if the data distributed normally, there are tools for analysis. Otherwise, you have to use another tool. Then also, normally, if you want to use structural equation modeling, for a small sample, a smart PLS, is the right tool to use. Yeah. These are my question and my comments. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Ahmed. Okay, so yes, you're right. I used Smart PLS because of the small sample size. The theories I touched on briefly, that they are the resource-based theory, the knowledge-based theory, and dynamic capabilities theories. So I merged all three theories and explained in the manuscript how the variables are related based on those three theories. So the learning, for example, learning orientation is underpinned by the knowledge-based theory. The entrepreneurial orientation is based on the resource-based theory. And the market orientation is based on the dynamic capabilities theory. Thank you so much for your comment.
So this is very interesting. So it's better for you to explain what is the contribution of the study. It means that you are combining different theory and then you add new variables. The missing part here, you need to write what is the contribution of your model to the knowledge, because definitely you need to highlight the gaps in these theories and then how your study fills the gaps. This is very significant actually to publish your work. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Doctor.
Thanks a lot. Any other comments or questions, maybe?
Professor, I just noticed from some of the comments on the social media, I know this question we had before, and I know you have asked one of the questions to Professor Doaa, but you can see that people, they don't really see how this artificial intelligence is really, they know it as a science, but you can see that how, or let's take us back to yesterday, what I said about University of Manchester, when the Times Higher found them as the most, or university #1 in terms of making impact on implementing SDGs, not by them teaching or researching on SDGs to the whole world, but they are doing it at the university. So there is a video I'm quite happy to share with all of you. You can see where the Vice Chancellor talking about 17 SDGs. So in terms of gender, they have implemented at the university the equal pay, blah, 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 blah. In terms of, for example, all the 17, you can see they tell you what they have done in the university. So the AI gamification and this digital transfer, or maybe the AI and gamification in particular, I can see people, they still don't realize how they are actually going to happen in classroom. I remember a couple of years ago, we had at Sussex University, they brought someone to have a workshop with us, all the staff at the School of Business, to show us how you can use games and gamification in your teaching. But I personally was there the whole day, but it wasn't very easy to understand how you're going to use it in your teaching. So I'm not sure. I know that Professor Doaa did answer that from the Egyptian perspective, but is there anyone who have actually seen this happening in the classroom?
I think we are having this practice on computer science university, computer science and engineering. They already have this in their own on their projects. So their graduation project is highly related to this. So it is implemented already. Okay, they are taking it as a graduation project in the management information system. They are doing it as well as in their graduation project. They can provide it in services, in the finance, in banking, in applications. It's not only in gaming, my dear, but it is also in different disciplines. We see it in the Q1, the banking, the marketing campaign, the applications. So in business, for example, it is basically on application where they can develop the application, they put the expectation, the complaints, the questions. They can develop what they call it a chatbot, where they can do it in they name it the model of the clouds. They do that in these classes. They can do that.
Okay.
Can I add a comment to this?
Yeah,
I have some experience, but I don't know if this is related to your question, Professor, about the actual applications of gaming in teaching. How is it done? Like in a business, you go into a business strategic management class and you would like to teach and use some gaming, some games to enhance your teaching experience for the students. So, and I've tried a couple in my classes. I don't know how successful they were. And it's cultural, I believe, in my opinion. I tried a game, a very popular known game called Kahoot. I don't know if you're familiar with it. And the students ended up taking pictures of the game on the screen because it's are you familiar with Kahoot? Where it's like a multiple choice where
yes, it is. I know that because when they succeeded and got scored, they are happy and they can take a picture.
Yeah, it was very dynamic, but there was a negative side that made me end it in class, to be honest, which is students used it. They wanted to know the questions that might come up in exams. They were using it to get a feel for. That's my first concern with that one, and of course it's a very disruptive class. You want to you become like a policeman in the class, and you're, hey, quiet, you sit down. This and that's the Kahoot experience. The other one, the simulation, the strategic management. So you give a bunch of resources. This is a company for you. You give them beforehand, divide them into groups. I can't remember. It's like 4 years ago I tried this one, and it's I can't remember the name of that game. But it was you divide resources, and again, it was used in a negative way, but it engaged for sure. I think if the students are responsible, maybe graduate students, I've not tried it with MBAs, but graduate students might be more responsible, as in to try to benefit from the game without the negative consequences that I experienced with the undergraduates. I think that's what you meant, the strategic game.
Yes, it is.
Application in class. I think that's the question. Was something.
Yes, when we do stock simulation as well, and we are asking students to do the stock simulation, and they are making trial, and they go. I think at the beginning they are child, but when they are taking the responsibility that they are going to win, there is a ranking, so they take it serious. So there must be related with an incentive in order to regulate, so people can behave well. It is a matter of managing the behavior of them. But honestly, this is make them engaged. This is make, if the class you think from your point is destructive, but it is not, it would last in their memory. They remember it. Because when I do that, the production cycle, and I want to explain the productivity of the people in class, and I give them tools and resources, and I want them to practice. At the beginning, they were joking, but finally, the time constraint make them achieve the target. So, and they last. And when they graduated, do you remember what we did that? So maybe this will last with their memory when they got engaged, and the engagement is better than teaching them because it lasts. Because in the exam, they can forget, but engagement and let them doing gaming and doing simulations and doing things on practice and doing things on real life, presenting papers, doing project. And it will be very inspiring when they are allowing in debating their project presentation. Such as the MUN and all these activities and the World Health Organization, engagement of students create a lot. And this paper has been incited of one of my colleagues, and a very young person, and I didn't know all these details because this is a different opportunity outside the old academic career. Thank you so much.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot, Professor Doaa and Dr. Hussein, for these very, very interesting examples on how to use the gaming in the class, namely for the graduate students. I don't know if you have other comments or examples on relation with these three papers. I think Professor Alam, you can. Your mic, yeah.
No, it's fine. I think you managed very well. I mean, to get the session despite the technical difficulties. But thank you, Professor Samir. It was wonderful. And I think thanks to all the speakers. I think it's quite an interesting to listen to all those different perspectives. I think particularly when you think of we're here in facing screen, but we are all scattered all over the world. And I think that was the beauty of what we have been missing in the last 2 years, really. I think it's quite an enriched, and as Professor Doaa said earlier, I mean, exactly, this is exactly what we are doing here. Many years ago, I remember when she wrote that chapter in a two major research project we did with InterScience, focusing on science and technology and entrepreneurship in the Middle East and North Africa. Many people told me they're still teaching that textbook in UAE and others, which is long time, I think 2007 or 8. So, but it was quite engaging. People were able to meet. And I still remember, Janai, when we came to San Lucia, because you really, the more you travel, the more you see how people are not just, you'll not just see a different country, but you see how people are managing their business, their economics, their health, and so on and so on. And you will see by your own eyes how people are actually living on this planet. Because when we went to San Lucia, I remember in 2010, I remember they had the Hurricane Thomas just before us. And I remember the land was cut in half. And they told us, the Prime Minister during the conference, he said, when the Hurricane Thomas struck San Lucia, they were using mobile phones, people to try to escape. Imagine, it was a real example. I'm still using that example as how ICT can save your life and so on. So it is very interesting to see these things. And I remember a different experience when we went to, I say this to many people, some of them, they may not even believe me at that time. We went to Australia, to Brisbane University. They hosted us in 2006 or 7, I can't remember, 7. And I remember Australia, this huge giant country, they told us you have to make sure you make your shower very short because there's a problem with water. Because Australia, every year they have some times of the year where there is a serious problem of, I don't want to call it drought, but so you really see how these things into play. So I hope next year we will be somewhere. And I can see here Shaista Kamal Khan, and I can tell you, we will listen to you tomorrow, but I believe you are from Pakistan. But I don't know if you look to the history of WSD, the nucleus, the idea of this whole WASD and the conference came when we were invited long time ago, you were maybe very young at that time, by the University of Karachi in Pakistan. It was a major UK Science and Technology Forum conference hosted by the University of Karachi. I think 400 people, and I went there. That's where we realized people start to talk about the need for multidisciplinary approach to approach these issues. And I think hopefully next year we will meet each other face to face.
So please remember, if we all help and do a little bit, it will make a big difference.